was 36 the week I learned my mother had priced my worth at 0 and my son's at nothing at all. She sent the invitation to my brother's house, addressed to everyone but us, and let the group chat confirm what the mail did not. Welcome back to Family Revenge Stories New, the channel where quiet people keep the receipts and family learns that boundaries have a price. If stories about dignity, documents, and consequences are your thing, drop a comment and subscribe. I am an estate planning attorney. 12 years now. People think the job is about death, but it isn't. It's about intention, what people actually meant, written down so no one can argue with it later. I spend my days translating love into legal language so it survives the people who might try to reinterpret it. I did not realize for most of my life that I'd been doing the same work for free inside my own family, translating my mother's conditional affection into something I could live with. My son is Eli. He is 9, sharp-elbowed and gap-toothed, and he has never once asked why his father isn't around, which is its own kind of grief I don't examine too closely. I raised him alone starting when he was 2. Not out of tragedy, out of clarity. His father wanted a different life than the one that included consequences, and I let him go find it. I did not tell my mother the whole story. I told her enough. She heard single mother, and stopped listening to anything that came after it. My mother, Diane, is turning 60 this year. She has been planning this birthday since she turned 59, the way some people plan invasions. A hall was booked. A string quartet was hired. My brother Mark, married with 2 children and a wife who calls our mother Mom instead of Diane. The correct password was made co-host. I was made without being told the help. I paid for the caterer's deposit in March because Mark's card had an issue. I picked up the calligrapher's proofs. I did this the way I do most things for my family. Quietly, competently, without being thanked, because I had learned a long time ago that being useful was the closest thing to being loved that I was going to get. The arithmetic ran like this, though I didn't write it down until later. I gave time, money, and labor. In return, I received inclusion conditionally, as long as I didn't remind anyone too loudly of the conditions. On a Tuesday in April, I opened the family group chat to find the final guest list, shared by my mother with the caption, "So excited." My name was not on it. Eli's was not on it. Mark's kids were. Mark's wife was. I read it twice before I understood I wasn't misreading it. I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, already annoyed, as though I'd interrupted something. "It's an elegant event," she said. "I just think it's better with couples. Whole families. You understand." "I am a whole family," I said. "You know what I mean, Rachel. It's not really. It's not the vibe I want for the pictures." A pause, and then, because my mother has never once in her life let a silence go unfilled with something worse. People will ask questions. I don't want to spend my 60th explaining why my daughter's a lowly single mom. I did not raise my voice. I have never once raised my voice at my mother. Not because I am gentle, but because I learned early that volume in that house always lost. "Okay," I said. "Thank you for telling me directly." Then I hung up and I took a screenshot of the guest list and I took a screenshot of nothing else because there was nothing else yet. There would be. I sat with that screenshot for a long time. I did not cry. I opened a folder on my laptop, the same kind of folder I open for clients, and I named it Diane Miscellaneous. Felt at the time like a joke. It would not stay one. My father died 4 years ago. He was quiet, the kind of quiet my mother mistook for absence her whole marriage, when really he was just the only person in the house doing the listening. He liked me, I think, in the specific way fathers like the child who reminds them of who they used to be before they got tired. He liked Eli more than he ever said out loud, in the way that men of his generation showed love through consistency rather than declaration. He called every Sunday, He came to every recital. He never once asked where Eli's father was. He left a will. I did not write it. You never write your own family's documents. That's the first rule they don't teach you until you've made the mistake once. But I reviewed it as a courtesy to the attorney he'd hired, a man named Delgado who'd known my father since they were both young and broke. The will was simple. The house to my mother, life estate. The investment accounts split 3 ways between my mother, Mark, and me. A modest trust for Eli's education, naming me as trustee. There was also a provision I hadn't reviewed closely at the time, because it hadn't mattered yet. A contingent clause. If my mother predeceased her own life estate, remarried or voluntarily vacated the property, or the property was sold, the house reverted not to Mark and me equally, but to whoever had, in Delgado's words, provided primary support and care to the surviving spouse in the ordinary course. My father, ever precise, had wanted to reward whoever actually showed up. He hadn't named a name. He'd built a test. I hadn't thought about that clause in years because my mother was alive and the house was hers to live in and none of it was relevant. Until 3 weeks after the guest list, when Delgado called and asked me to come into his office. He is 71, silver-haired, unhurried in the particular way of men who have delivered bad news for a living and learned that speed only makes it worse. His office smelled like the same coffee it always had. He slid a folder across the desk. "Your mother came to see me last month," he said. "She wants to refinance the house. Take out a significant loan against the equity, for the birthday as it happens, and some renovation she's planning after. She needed my sign-off as the estate's original counsel, given the life estate structure." "Okay," I said, because I did not yet understand why this required a meeting. I told her I couldn't sign off without reviewing whether the loan would trigger the contingent clause. Delgado said. "Taking out debt against the property, using it as collateral in a way that risks the asset, under your father's language, that qualifies as a form of voluntary encumbrance. It's the same category as a sale." He tapped the folder. "She didn't know the clause existed. I don't think your brother does either." I read the clause. I read it a second time slower, the way I read every contract before I let a client sign it, hunting for the sentence someone would later swear didn't say what it said. I read it a third time out loud, quietly, to hear how it would sound to a judge. There was a second document in the folder, smaller, handwritten, tucked behind the will's formal pages. A letter from my father, dated the week before he died, addressed to Delgado with instructions to hold it until it was useful. It was 3 sentences long. "Rachel does the work nobody thanks her for. If it ever comes down to it, make sure the house goes to whoever actually showed up. Don't let them turn this into a fight, but don't let her lose because she was too polite to argue." I did not act on any of it that day. I sat in my car in Delgado's parking lot for 11 minutes, reading both documents again, and then I drove home and made Eli dinner and did not mention it once. My mother's refinancing plans moved forward without her knowing anything had changed. Mark, meanwhile, had begun speaking about the party and the house in a new register. He called me in May to ask if I'd chip in for the party's overage, since it's basically an investment in the family estate anyway. He used that phrase, family estate, the way people use words they don't understand the weight of. "She would have wanted us all comfortable," he said once about our mother, who was very much alive and comfortable already. It was the kind of sentence people say about the dead, borrowed early for the living, because it makes the asking sound like duty instead of appetite. He came to my house on a Sunday in June uninvited, sat at my kitchen table while Eli was at a friend's, and told me carefully, the way people rehearse cruelty into something that sounds like concern, that maybe it would be easier for everyone if I sat this one out gracefully. That Mom wasn't trying to hurt me. That I should let it go for the family. I asked him one question. Who told you the house was getting refinanced? He blinked. What? Nothing, I said. Just wondering who's counting on what. He left 20 minutes later, unsettled and unable to say why. I called Delgado that evening. Send the letters, I said. Formal notice to my mother and Mark. I want the clause on the table before the loan closes, not after. If you've ever watched people who couldn't spare one afternoon for you suddenly find all the time in the world once money enters the room, you already know exactly where this is going. Stick with me. My mother's 60th was held in a rented hall with white orchids and a string quartet that had cost more than my first car. I was invited in the end, a grudging addendum, forwarded by my sister-in-law with the message Diane says you can come, obviously don't make it weird. 3 days before the event, after Delgado's letter had already landed on my mother's desk, I understood the invitation for what it was. A chance to smooth things over before the paperwork became a problem. I brought Eli. I brought a folder. The toasts came before dinner. Mark stood first, champagne in hand, and thanked our mother for always putting family first. A sentence that landed in my chest like a paper cut, small, precise, and slow to actually hurt. My mother cried gracefully the way she cries in public, and thanked everyone for understanding what this year meant to her. And I understood she meant the loan dressed up as sentiment. When the toasts finished, I asked for the floor. My mother smiled and gestured for the microphone, already composing her face into the expression she uses when she expects to be thanked. I wanted to say something about family arithmetic, I said. I did not raise my voice. About what gets counted and what doesn't. I opened the folder. I named the guest list first, the screenshot, the date, the caption. I read her words back to her, the exact ones, lowly single mom, and let them sit in a room full of orchids. I did not editorialize. Then I named the clause. I explained, in the plain language I use for clients who don't want jargon, what a life estate is, what encumbrance means, what my father had written and why. I read the 3 sentences from his letter last, once without inflection, because they didn't need help from me to land. My mother's face moved through the stages I'd expect from a hostile witness. Soft confusion, wounded appeal, rising volume, a threat about lawyers she didn't have, and finally silence. The kind that comes when a person understands the room has already decided without them. Mark's wife excused herself to the restroom and did not come back for the rest of it. I never held that against her. Mark said my name 3 times, each one louder, before Delgado, invited quietly by me, seated near the door, stood and confirmed calmly everything I'd said was accurate. I laid one more thing on the table before I left. The original refinance authorization my mother had signed, the one that would have triggered the clause without her understanding it, next to my father's letter. No explanation. The 2 documents beside each other did the arguing. My mother's sister, Aunt Carol, found me in the parking lot afterward. She didn't apologize for the room exactly, but she said quietly, "He always said you'd be the one to notice." It didn't fix anything. I didn't expect it to. I took Eli's hand before we left. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said. "I hope the house is worth what it cost you." The loan never closed. Delgado's letter made the risk explicit enough that the bank's underwriter asked for clarification my mother couldn't provide without disclosing the clause, and she withdrew the application rather than have it formally tested. The house stays hers, life estate intact, exactly as my father wrote it. I never wanted to take it from her while she was living in it. I only wanted her to understand it was never hers to gamble. Mark stopped calling for 4 months. When he called again, it was about our mother's blood pressure, not money. I don't think we've fully recovered, and I've stopped assuming we will. My mother sent one letter 2 months later. Not an apology, not really, an acknowledgement, which from her is close enough to count. She wrote that she hadn't understood what she'd been running the numbers on her whole life. I keep it in the same folder as my father's letter now. They read strangely well together. My father's letter lives in Eli's baby book now, tucked behind his kindergarten photo, where I'll show it to him when he's old enough to understand what it means to be the one who shows up. The guest list screenshot I deleted. It had done its job. I used part of my share of the estate to start a scholarship in my father's name, for kids of single parents heading to trade school or college, the kind of quiet, unglamorous support he gave me my whole life without ever calling it anything. It isn't revenge. It's just continuing a ledger he already opened. I didn't take anything from my mother that wasn't already, on paper, never fully hers to begin with. I just stopped agreeing to pay for a debt no one had ever actually written down, until someone finally did. If this reminded you that quiet people keep the receipts, and that boundaries are allowed even with blood, take that as your sign. Update what needs updating. Tell someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.